Because the stage that Liverpool are at right now, there is kind of this frustration around where the club is going, but also where the club is currently at. And there are two opposing forces as to what we really need to do. What do we need to do in the short term to get us over the line in the Premier League, to get us as far as we can get in the Champions League, to win in the Cups as well, which is obviously very pertinent this week, but also to make sure that our medium to long-term future is secured, not only with some of these older players, such as the Salahs and the Van Dijks, who seem to be hitting imperious form this season, but also some of the younger guys. Obviously, we've just seen Jadon Danns go out the door to Sunderland, having signed a brand new contract at Liverpool. We saw, I think, Spurs sign another Liverpool under-18s player. We've seen, a couple of comings and goings. Tyler Morton was subject to a few bids. We've seen, obviously, Ben Doak and a couple of other players subject to those similar bids. Liverpool looking to get value within the market, but also knowing that in this period, almost not rocking the boat in at least January is a better thing to do for the relatively settled Arne Slot side. And without wishing to speak too soon, there are moments where you think it's almost better the devil you know than better the player you don't. And you can always see the upsides to one of these transfers coming in, and you can always see the downsides of the player that you know very well. Darwin Núñez, when he first came into Liverpool, was someone everyone was excited about, who was diamond in the rough, so to speak. And loads of people were very happy about the upsides of what a goal scorer would bring. The yin and the yang of where Erling Haaland currently sits and where Núñez sits and where all the top goal scorers in the league sit, maybe apart from Isak, is that there are some really big payoffs to having them in your team, but there are also some things you need to do in build-up in order to accommodate them in your side. And that doesn't always make for the most beautiful of football, unless you're Isak. Which is why there are a lot of rumours that this summer Liverpool and a number of other clubs are going to go for an elite-level striker like Isak, and that, honestly, they're all looking to spend a serious amount of cash on a player that, broadly, they think can be the next 6-7 years of their club because of the elite level of striker that this guy is. Now, I will remind you that a couple of years ago, there were some real questions over Isak's head. I'm not saying that those questions still apply now. There are a majority of those that have been answered, but there are still injury periods. There are still times out on the sideline when his club looked frustrated. There are still moments where you think, okay, this is amazing for Newcastle, who are looking to make that step up, but what is it in the medium to long term that really he's going to be able to achieve at that club? That might open the door, should we say, for a couple of big moves, or at least one big move at Newcastle this summer. But that's almost beyond the pale at this point. That's beyond what we need to think about in the immediate future. Liverpool need a squad that is settled. Liverpool need a team that understand the system and understand the principles of what it is that Slot's trying to achieve. And they need a set of players who've been coached to a level where they can execute what it is that Slot needs, rather than having to coach up another player and bring him into, should we say, bring him to fruition within just a couple of months. That is a, not fruitless exercise, but an exercise which I would say is very difficult to execute midway through a season, and one which also brings pretty low value in the January transfer window. You're probably expected to shell out quite a lot of money in this period. The point being, you can buy someone in this time who could be a great left back, a great backup centre back, a great striker. Liverpool even looking at moving Darwin on at one point, or people are looking at moving Darwin on from Liverpool. There are a number of different players you look to move on. Real Madrid were inquiring about Trent at right back. Liverpool said absolutely not. You can look at it from a transfer perspective, or a perspective of wanting to turn over this squad and wanting to achieve things, and that being where the wins are gotten. But when there is something so tangible on the line, especially around Liverpool, such as a league title that would take us level with Manchester United, a league title which would make us very attractive to go and sign for, a league title which would be a great endorsement of what it is that Slot, Edwards, Hughes and Klopp have done over the last few years, and would also be a great endorsement of where our players have been, possibly giving a full stop at the end of some of their illustrious times at Liverpool and leading into a brand new era. We want that level of hope. You buy yourself more time, by the way, when you win things like league titles. You put yourself in a position to essentially, how can I put it, achieve, so to speak. Because there isn't this immediate pressure of, what do we got to do? We've got to win this now, otherwise this player's going to leave and this is going to go. If Liverpool were fourth right now, which, it wouldn't be a terrible position for Liverpool to be in, but if Liverpool were fourth right now, and we felt that we'd only really furnish someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold or Mo Salah's cabinet with only one trophy of the Premier League in this time, or one Champions League, or whatever it is, we would feel frustrated. We'd feel like our chapter was coming to an end in a way that we didn't want that page to turn. We didn't want to finish that story. That would be, first of all, a point which I think within the fan base we would look. There would be people who would look to blame certain people for that. There'd be people who would be saying, "Why is this chapter ending in the first place?" Change is a lot easier to accept in football because of the absolutes when you can win. It's much easier to change things when you win than it is when you're losing and you need to change things, because confusion or the confusion within the fan base can sometimes skew and misconstrue how decisions are made, because panic within the fan base seemingly equals, some people would say, I don't agree with this theory, equal panic at board level, panic at a senior management level, panic at the management level, panic at the player level. I would say a lot of the time, the narratives that have been going on fan channels and in journalists' rotations of stories around Liverpool this season haven't been the same stories that have been going on behind the scenes, should we say, at Liverpool. Some of them have borne relative similarities in the people who are part of them, but we're telling very different stories either side. So, for instance, Mo Salah coming out and speaking about his contract, Jamie Carragher's interpretation of that. Two very different elements. Trent relatively being unhappy with his contract situation and therefore looking at people like Real Madrid, the coverage of that, which seems not very nuanced, but also reflects the anger and the frustration that Liverpool fans feel towards the club, but also a young guy at the club who they feel they want to back, who they feel they want to have as part of their project for the medium to long term. That's fair enough. Virgil van Dijk, because there has been nothing said around it, because the assumption is that he will re-sign, has actually caused very few headlines in this period, and actually because he's captain of the club, because he's put in some great performances so far this season, and I would say, like, all-time performances, which have looked very self-assured, which have looked captain level, which have looked Liverpool all-time great level. We've managed to sail over some of those poor elements, should we say. That's helped us, actually, in this period. Same goes for Alisson. When we bought Mamardashvili, I would have expected a lot more rumours around him in this time. But broadly, I can't say that I identified anyone in the market. You can even tell me Kerkez could have come in at Liverpool, and I think it would have made a significant difference at left-back. I think it would have made a really exciting difference. But I can't say that I think if we would have had to compromise and have bought in Kerkez for another 10, 15 million on top of that, therefore compromising a long-term goal of what we want to do in the summer. By the way, the assumption is that we're going to do something significant, or as Fabrizio Romano and a couple of other big journalists have said, important in the summer. Then what? Realistically, it's not about saying Robertson can do no job at Liverpool. It's not we need a left back and a left back will not start in these games. It's, and I get it, these words could very much come back to bite me in a period after this, where it's like, oh, Robertson makes another mistake. Tsimikas has a game where he doesn't exactly look incredible, or he doesn't fulfill all the things that someone like Slot needs. That's where I think we underestimate people like Slot. I think we underestimate coaches. He's just in general, to be honest. I think especially when it comes to like this kind of coach, because he's not exactly like because he's been very charismatic, but in a way which hasn't been in a Mourinho kind of fashion, or he hasn't had that kind of media circus around him. It's made it a lot less fruity and exciting for a lot of people. And because that level of excitement hasn't been felt, I think a lot of people have correlated that, therefore, with no success. They've kind of looked for this, they've kind of assessed him in an alpha male style way, where they want him to exhibit certain traits which correlate to what they think success or power means, rather than looking at what success and power means at Liverpool and within that management structure and within the men that exist at that club, and women, but also, obviously the men are the senior people, so it's just people, but you get what I'm saying. I'm not excluding women from that, but you get what I mean. That is important. That's important to have harmony and a symbiosis of understanding between those people at the top. It just sounds like you're using a big word in symbiosis there, but what I mean is like a give and a take of, we're not going to get any players in this January transfer window, are you going to need to coach them? And his understanding of that, his need to spin that, to skew that, to essentially make the best of it. That does not make him an apologist for FSG, as some people have put it forward. That does not make Edwards or Hughes or anyone else an apologist for these people. Players not signing contracts does not make any of the staff at Liverpool apologists for, they're doing their job, essentially. Like, you can question the level to which they're doing their job, but you can't just say, therefore, Hughes is doing a bad job because no one signed a new contract. There will be parameters within which he has to operate. There will be ideas that he has. There will also be assessments of the market that he has. And none of those things are things that we have access to at this point. We don't know, is my point. Now, I'm not assuming, therefore, that that means that everything is good. I'm sure that there are plenty of mistakes that have been made at the club. But for instance, you could class Darwin Núñez to an extent as a mistake of sorts because he only really worked consistently, even though he's had some relatively good stats this season, and we can just talk about stats rather than talking about the overall performances, rather than talking about some of the contributions, all these kind of things. I get what a good player he's been in it. There are some statistics which really back up how valuable he's been to the side. There is no doubt that none of these players have been valuable to the team. All of these players have been valuable to the team. But that's kind of part of being a team here, and especially like a premium level team. And I think the assumption is that because Liverpool are top of the league, because they top their Champions League group, because they've limped through some of these games or they've gotten some good results. We've judged things on results, which I get is a results-based business, but we can't judge that our future will be good based only on the current results because a player performed now rather than later, because we managed to compromise some of what it is that we're trying to achieve in order to win in the short term and obviously make a good project. Then in the long term we go, well, that player just needs to stay there. The win we should really be taking in some of these is, if we're finding value in some of these players, that's more value that we're going to get on the transfer market. If we're finding value in some of these older, younger, Klopp-suited players, any of them, or even just players who've come through the academy, very high upside, but cannot currently fit into the team, the biggest win that we can get out of those is saying, this has been great, but we just can't accommodate you within this team right now. I genuinely think if Núñez had come from within the club and we hadn't spent a huge amount of money on him, I don't think as many people would be backing him. I think a lot of people would actually be quite anti him, but that's beyond the point of support at this point. Like, to critique him in such a way is only to do bad at this point in the season here. When it comes to the off season, let's have a similar conversation to the one that a lot of people wanted to have about Jurgen Klopp at one point, and whether we were talking about the honest, no rose-colored tinted glasses kind of approach to Klopp. Even though I think really that was a misguided conversation in the first place, but that's all the conversation to have. The point is, now this is where this Liverpool squad is at. They have to double down. Dan's going and a couple of the young guys being loaned out, I think makes sense to me. But it also means that we are saying Núñez is our guy, Robertson is our guy, Tsimikas is our guy. In midfield, we don't feel like we can bring anyone in January for real value, which is, again, kind of part of our transfer policy, only bringing in players that we're going to see in a medium to long-term future, not just a short-term thing. And I think that's, we knew that to an extent. But therefore, we cannot go around just creating headlines based around short-term wants at a club rather than the long-term gain. And we have to tell this long-term story within our fan base in order to be the best supporters that we can be and to understand what the vision is at Liverpool rather than, or at least try our best to understand that vision and support that vision. No one's saying apologize. No one's saying say that FSG are amazing. No one's saying, oh, they have to be backed or, we can't question them as owners. Of course we can question our owners. But we cannot just keep saying we haven't made enough signings or this guy went there and therefore we missed out on him. We didn't want someone like Tell. We weren't going to get someone like Kirkes because of his own public comments. We were not going to get our biggest and best signings in this month, even though we have in the past, because those people weren't available, or because those people couldn't leave midway through the season, or because those other clubs, similar to buying a house, couldn't sell down the chain or couldn't buy down the chain in order to replace those other people. That, I think, it's where I'm at mentally with this right now and how we support this process. Equally, by the way, there have been some massive wins for us. Harvey Elliott speaking in public in the way that he has. Konate kind of putting out those briefs to the journalists about wanting to be committed to the club. Van Dijk not really saying anything at all, I think is relatively positive. Slot managing this has done a very good job so far. And I don't always think that that's going to, there are going to be storms and moments when he has to essentially quell a bit of frustration and anger. But also, I think he's broadly ridden out like what is a very frustrating period for some Liverpool fans, or would have been if, say, Klopp was still here. He's managed that very well. And I think that's worthy of praise, because very often we can go, oh, this genius tactic. And actually, there's no one speaking about his strategy in a press conference, his strategy post-match, his clarity of speech, his relationships with players, all things that I think are feeding into the level of season that Liverpool have had so far, and can feed into a level of momentum that can keep Liverpool relatively moving at a good... It's not about speed, it's about velocity. At a good velocity until the end of the season. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'd imagine some people thought this was too conceptual, but welcome. There is a Discord down there. I appreciate you guys being in there. Go take a look at it. If you want to go support Patreon, you're more than welcome to do that as well. I'll chat to you guys in a little while. Much love.